Best of r/malicious compliance episode 4. I work on major construction projects and the powers that be are always looking to optimize costs. Read, pay less for the same stuff, and they rarely pay attention to the old adage of if it ain't broke, don't fix it. So, recently, we had a large amount of pipe that needed to be moved out to site. The normal way to do this is to collect the pipe from the supplier, move it to a laydown/storage yard and then bundle it up into smaller loads that can be sent out to the construction site. You will see why this is if you read further. In this instance though, Dave the clueless engineer had other plans. In Dave's infinite wisdom, the pipe would be moved directly from the supplier to the right-of-way, row, and would thus save time, minimize damage, no double handling, and all of the extra transport costs. I strenuously objected because Dave's plan was about as sensible as installing a screen door on a submarine to keep the fish out. Needless to say, Dave's plan was accepted with enthusiastic acclaim and Dave got many pats on the back for his thriftiness and cost-saving vision. Yours truly just sighed. Now, in the rural parts of the state where we are running pipelines, the row is often a dirt track in between fenced-off paddocks where livestock graze or crops are grown. There is quite limited room to place pipe on the ground and even less room to maneuver once you add in the vacuum lifter truck required to unload the transport truck. Dave, of course, didn't consider anything I said on this to be pertinent to the matter at hand, so I send out a final "Are you sure?" email to all and sundry. Yes, we are sure, just fucking get it done. Okay then, there are about 30 truckloads of pipe to unload. This cannot all be done in a single day and so I organize for the first 4 truckloads to be sent out on day number 1 along with the vac lifter. Truck turns up at the row and the vac lifter starts unloading pipe and laying it down beside the trench where the pipe would be buried. The pipe is 21 meters, 69, long, or about the same length as a truck. The unloading operations were therefore: move truck into position, stop truck, driver exits vehicle and moves to side of cab. Safety regulations. Vac lifter moves into position, picks pipe up, puts pipe down then moves away. Driver re-enters truck, moves truck 1 truck length along the row. Repeat. By contrast, to unload pipe into a laydown yard, the operations are: move truck into position, stop truck, driver exits vehicle and moves to side of cab. Safety regulations. Vac lifter moves into position, picks pipe up, puts pipe down into storage pile. Repeat unloading until truck is clear, then moves away. Driver re-enters truck and drives off happily, with all of the fucking around at the row, unloading 40 lengths of DN 250 pipe, 10 inch. Took about 5 hours as opposed to maybe 1 hour for the other option. No big deal. Driver doesn't care because he gets paid but the other 3 trucks scheduled for unload can't get in because there's not enough room in the row for them to get past each other and there's only 1 vac lifter because the site crew typically don't try to unload 160 lengths of pipe in a day. No big deal. The other truck drivers don't care because they're getting paid too. So now that truck number 1 has been unloaded, the driver asks where can he turn around and gets told that there's enough room about 14 kilometers, 8.5 mi, down the row. So off he drives, turns around and then receives a call on his radio when he's about halfway back. Driver number 1 has reached his maximum allowable driving hours for the day. This is a legislative requirement and cannot be exceeded for any reason. Driver number 1 has to stop his truck and get a federally mandated minimum 10-hour rest period in a room with a bed, not his truck cabin. It's getting dark soon and driver number 2, number 3 and number 4 are in the same predicament. Our site crew have spare space at their camp and pick up each of the drivers, who each leave their trucks where they are parked, and go off to sleep. Next day, same thing. We're a bit more efficient so we managed to get truck number 2 and half of truck number 3 unloaded. Driver number 1 finally gets past and drives off. His job is done. Day 3, same deal and we clear the remaining loads. Driver number 2, number 3 and number 4 have all had to sleep a second night and driver number 3 and number 4 will have to sleep a third. Now, not only has this clusterfuck held up the row operations for 3 days but contractual trucks have a certain demurrage period. This period is how long the truck will wait to be unloaded and is typically 2 hours. After that, there is a charge per hour. In this case the hourly rate was $130. Driver number 1 was held up for 46 hours. $5,980. Driver number 2 was held up for 70 hours. $9,100. Drivers number 3 and number 4 were held up for 94 hours. $24,440. Site crew daily rate for operations, working or idle, $24,000 x 3 equals $72,000. Total for Dave's brainstorm, $111,520. Dave was moved to a less demanding role in line with his experience and skill set. He is no longer in charge of anything and is back performing the sort of boring work normally assigned to a graduate engineer. TL. Dr. Idiot fails to listen to experts and racks up a massive bill. Thank you. Next. A good few years back I did some occasional contract work for my country's prison service. I'd work a total of maybe 3 afternoons a month. That could be in any 3 out of 8 or so prisons. I'd submit timesheets at each prison, and eventually get around €750, less deductions for tax and insurance, deposited in my bank account. Now, the thing is they were hopeless at paperwork, and, to make it worse, the system was designed to assume that everyone was employed at exactly one prison only, so cross-prison paperwork and budgeting was bizarrely complicated. My timesheets all had to be posted from each prison to my home prison, the one I was nominally employed at. The home prison added up the numbers, sent a request to the National Pay Unit for processing. At best, a timesheet was delayed a month, often longer. Payslips I got gave no clue as to which timesheets they covered, so I had no way to tell which timesheets had been paid, and which were in process, or had been denied or lost. Typically, as far as I could see, about 1 in 10 timesheets were lost, or altered. So I was being underpaid by maybe 10% with no obvious way of correlating pay to timesheets. That was good for a prison who was trying to underspend their budget, but not so good for me. I complained bitterly to the national headquarters. They commiserated, but said there was nothing much anyone could really do until a new national pay system was put in place. I would just have to trust them to get it right in the end. About 2 months later, I worked a short month. Total timesheets would have totaled around €250. A month or 2 later, €25,000, less deductions, drops into my bank account. The payslip gave no clue as to which of my timesheets was being paid. TL. Doctor. And so, dear reader, I trusted them. They never asked for it back. So it must have been right. Yes? Thank you. Next. This isn't like a lot of the other malicious compliance on this wonderful sub, so if it doesn't fit, please feel free to harass, belittle, and slash or downvote me with impunity. As is tradition, I work at a medium-small jewelry store with 8 other people. Today, my boss tried pulling one of his typical power moves by loudly berating me in front of my co-workers and customers. It didn't work out well for him. As a goldsmith, my job is to create, repair, renew, and adjust various items to customer specifications. Even though I've been in the industry for about 20 years, I'll be the first to admit to my limitations. I don't know everything and I need help sometimes. Unfortunately, my boss is a bit of an alpha and feels the need to assert dominance in the most petty ways. One of his favorite methods of demeaning people at work is to loudly declare how easy a repair is and how little time it would take him. Today I found I had a particularly difficult repair and asked him for advice. I was told to do it the way I assumed, but then my boss noticed a few co-workers were around and decided squeeze a little posturing into his explanation. Boss, and you just reinforce the link by the clasp before running the first axle through. I know it's damaged, but it'll work just fine, and now that he sees he has an audience, I don't know why you're even asking. This job would only take me 10 minutes. 10 minutes? Now I knew I was going to be working on this bracelet for at least twice that time because it required 4 cuts, 4 soldiers, 4 drilled holes, 2 pins, an acid soak, filing, polishing, and an ultrasonic bath. His intention was for people to see it took me much longer than 10 minutes and assume I was slacking or inexperienced. The store was quiet when I answered. Asphalt somersaults, really? 10 minutes? You should do it then. I'd love to learn how to be as good as you. Boss up. You should know this. I'm not going to pay to teach you what you should already know. So quiet now. Everyone's listening. Even the sales girls and customers went silent to hear the rest of the exchange. Asphalt somersaults, of course. I won't expect you to. I'm willing to forfeit an hour of pay to learn how to do this so quickly. I'll still work after the 10 minutes. Boss, I'm actually very busy and asphalt somersaults, I'll pay you 2 hours of my wages to teach me for 10 minutes. Earlier, you spent 20 minutes lecturing a coworker on the housing market in our city, so surely you can find 10 minutes to complete this repair while I watch and learn, right? The job isn't due until tomorrow. I'll stay late with everyone. We can even bring in the other goldsmiths to learn on my dime. Boss number. I have payroll to do and, a bunch of other jobs. At this point he's backing away and the rest of the staff has turned their heads to hide their smiles. Just do your job. Asphalt somersaults, how about 3 hours pay? No answer as he scurried off. It felt so good. Job ended up taking about a half-hour spread through the day. He avoided me until I finished. Thank you. Next. My wife and I have had this 12-year feud over the dishes. When I wash them, she complains I put stuff in the wrong spot in the dishwasher. When she does them, I complain that she ran the thing half empty because she wasted all of the space putting things in a certain area only. Anyway, recently she said to me, please put the saucer plates in the lower area. I said they are small and fit fine up top. She told me that if it has the word plate and the title of the item it needs to go below. I told her that was silly because we should do it by size. She said, it's simple. If it has the word cup or bowl it goes up top. If it has the word plate, pot, pan or jug, it needs to go down. I said again it really should be about size and not what's in the name. She disagreed. So I complied yesterday. I had a big mixing bowl that I would usually wash by hand but decided since it had the word bowl in it, I would put it up top and force the dishwasher closed. I didn't turn it on because I didn't want to break the machine. But she went to go open it and pull out the top rack. It was stuck because of the bowl. She told me that it was silly to put that big of a bowl up there, but I pointed out that it had the word bowl in it and her rules were it doesn't matter about size, only name. Thank you. Next. I had worked at a telecommunications store for quite a few years and as someone who has worked in all sorts of retail, I can say beyond a shadow of a doubt that telco has the worst customers, but every now and then you get back at the worst by giving them exactly what they want. We had a local small business owner that had several services with us. Mobile phones, broadband, landlines, the works. He thought that since he had a lot of services it meant that he could do what he wanted and the rules did not apply to him. This included getting behind on his bills, complaining about late fees and absolutely losing it if any services were suspended/restricted. Bear in mind that this only happens after 3 months of overdue bills. If any of these were to happen he would stomp in, yell and carry on. Now in a lot of telco stores we are just that, stores. We can only do very little when it comes to accounts, especially business accounts. I know it's ridiculous and if we had the capabilities to do even a few account things in store it would have made so many people's lives easier. So we would process a payment and then call up the accounts department to reinstate the services or unrestrict them. One week in particular he came in all smiles and shaking hands. He didn't even mind waiting in line for the people in before him to be served. Normally he would storm up to any consultant even if they were with customers already being served. I had the luck of being the first one free to serve him. He goes on a long speech about how he is expanding his business and needs several new phones for new staff he is hiring. I congratulate him and go about the process of getting them activated. He hit a problem early on. Surprise surprise. He has overdue bills and the system cannot apply new services to an account that is overdue. This does not mean a bill has been issued. It means it is past its due date. He is livid saying he needs those services. I get on the phone with the accounts team and they are willing to waive the default wait time of 3 business days after an account is settled before applying new services. He wasn't having a bar of it and said he wants the services and will not be paying a cent today. I inform him that it simply cannot be done. Literally impossible in our system to do it. He starts yelling saying that he wants to cancel his services and take them elsewhere. I tell him that it is not something we can do in store and he will need to contact the business accounts department and they can assist him in moving his services elsewhere. He stomps off and I thought this would be the end of it. Oh how wrong I was. The very next day, as soon as the store opens, He is there waiting, red-faced and on the warpath. Being the most senior person during the shift, I dealt with him. He yells about being on the phone for ages, being told they advise not to cancel but to go to another telco and port his services. I'm guessing they didn't explain it too well, as porting means to transfer your services to another provider, keeping the same numbers and having minimal if any interruption of service. I explained to him very plainly about what porting meant and that all he needed to do was go to another carrier, sign up his services, give them the numbers he wants brought across, and once they do, we automatically cancel his services on our end once the other provider takes ownership. Simple, right? Wrong. He refused to leave the store until his services were cancelled. Time for my malicious compliance. While it wasn't something we could do in store, we had manual paperwork for lots of things in case of systems going down, compatibility issues, etc. So I go through our internal server to find manual paperwork for account/service cancellations and print it off, filling everything out on it ready to go. I request 2 forms of it which I need to photocopy that needs to be attached to the paperwork and get him to sign, informing him in no uncertain terms that if he goes ahead with this, his services will be deactivated within 2 business days and will no longer function. He was fine with this, saying once that happened he would go elsewhere. He signed and I went about contacting accounts, faxing the paperwork through, and they processed it all and forwarded me the confirmation for our in-store records. 2 days later, I once again opened the store and he is there waiting, red-faced, and the second he sees me starts screaming at me that none of his services are working and his company cannot get anything done. No phones, no internet, etc., and that he is going to sue us for lost income and everything else. I go out the back and pull out the paperwork, going over it with him, going over what I told him the other day. He no longer has any services with us. They are now cancelled and he will be unable to sign up any new services or potentially reactivate any services until his overdue account is paid. I take him to a computer and try to access his account, showing him it no longer exists on our end and there is literally nothing I can do. He gets up angry but defeated and leaves yelling, "We have now lost a big customer. Hadn't we already?" Epilogue. I talked to a friend of mine who worked at a different telco who ended up dealing with the business owner. Due to his services being cancelled, they were unable to port/transfer his numbers across since they now didn't exist, and to sign up a broadband service could take up to 10 business days to have activated. His business was essentially shut down for 2 weeks and having to give new numbers to everyone associated with his business because he didn't want to pay his bills and didn't want to listen about porting. Couldn't have happened to a nicer guy. Thank you. Next. My boss had a talk with me earlier in the year about my hours after I got my promotion. I went from 9:05 to 9:06 apparently, and I didn't know, so I continued to leave at 5 p.m. as usual. He said that it was in my employment contract that I signed when I took the promotion. I went home, read it, and it said 10 to 6 p.m. with an hour lunch. For the past 8 months have been coming in at 8:30 and having 30-minute lunches. I was kinda annoyed that HR didn't point out that I was now entitled to an hour lunch. In retrospect, I should have read through everything, but really though, does anyone expect their lunch time to change like that? The next day, I came in at 9:28 a.m. and he said that I was late. And I said no, I'm not, I'm 32 minutes early. You said the employment contract had my hours, so I went home and reread it and it said my hours are 10:06. So while I don't come in at 10 a.m., I still do take my time and come in at 9:20 cause it gives me time to relax and have my coffee in the morning before starting my day. It's the least I can get for being forced to shift my entire workday an hour like that. Edit. Just to clarify, the primary reason why I still come in early is because it almost guarantees me a parking spot in front of the building. Thank you. Next. Obligatory. This happened a while back, but as the cold weather sets back in, I thought of this sub whilst regaling the story to my new boss. TL. Doctor at the bottom. I am a notorious long storyteller. I shall set the scene. The UK has just been hit by the beast from the east at the start of 2018. As per usual, when there is the slightest bit of adverse weather in the UK, the rail system is up the wall and trying to travel to the station, let alone actually commute into London, is proving difficult. I work in IT, on a service desk, and therefore basically take phone calls, remote onto people's machines and then go to their desk if absolutely necessary. Our service desk split these tasks so that someone is on desk side whilst the rest are on calls, and if your call escalates to the need for a desk side visit, you pass it over. I spoke with my line manager ahead of the impending storm to say that the areas some of our team lived, including myself, were due to get hit hard, and therefore it may be prudent to test our home setups in case we needed to provide support from home. This was a worst case scenario. The beast from the east hit, and the weather worsened, and the snow hit the fan. Monday morning, I wake up to a wall of white and call my manager to say that I will struggle to make it to the station, let alone the office. A quick check of the rail website reveals cancellations and delays galore. Manager says not a problem. She has had some other calls of the same nature and has asked that I get logged in remotely to handle calls and resolve issues remotely where possible. Some of our team live in central London and have managed to make it into the office, so they will handle desk side visits. This same setup continues on Tuesday and Wednesday as well. It works well. The people at home answer the phone calls and take care of what they can whilst passing anything they can to the people in the office to do local visits. There aren't a huge amount of people in the office due to the weather conditions anyway. Over the Tuesday/Wednesday I hear rumblings that the head of IT, my manager's manager, is unhappy with the fact that some of the service desk are getting to work from home, and I have been keeping an eye on the weather and the train situation, and neither has improved a great deal. Thursday morning, there has been no extra snow overnight and my train company declares that they can run some extra services, but they will still be limited and they will be slow trains, so delays are expected. However, the road conditions to get to my local station are still abysmal. So I call my manager again and say trains are getting there, but the roads are still rubbish. Happy for me to man the phones from home again today, and she is fine with that, as expected. I head downstairs and get logged in nice and early and start helping out. I know that my manager is doing me a favor by not forcing me to come in, and so I am happy to do her a favor and help out where and when I can. Then, at around 9 AM, I get a call from my manager stating that you need to come into work. Now, head of IT has decided that if he can make it into the office, so can everyone else. If you can't, you need to take today as holiday. Cue malicious compliance. A couple of my colleagues who live real far out say that they cannot make it into work, so they take holiday. I don't really fancy using my holiday because the head of IT is being unreasonable, so I say that I will head in. I tell my manager that I don't know how long it will take me, and she says that's fine. I'll see you when you get here. So I sign out of my computer and I get myself booted and wrapped up and head out into the cold. 9:15 AM. I haven't prepared my car at all this week, so it is covered in snow and has been sitting cold. So I start clearing the windshield and the sides and then make a start on the roof. Need to make sure the car is clear of snow before setting off to be safe for myself and others. Once all the snow is clear, I start her up and let her idle for a little while. Don't want to cause damage to my car setting off from cold, and this allows the inside to get warm and the windscreen to clear off fully. 9:45 AM. I set off for the station. The roads are, as presumed, terrible. I can't drive at anywhere normal speed, and considering it is now 10 AM, the roads are busier than when I leave for work normally. My normal 15-minute drive turns into an hour. And I can't even make it to my normal parking area as the roads are even worse there than where I started. 11 AM. I abandon the car and start walking. It's slippery, even in heavy duty boots. So I take my time. No point injuring myself trying to get to work. As I get closer to my station, the pathways clear up as they have gritted, thankfully. 11:30. I get to the station. This is normally a 20/25 minute journey. The trains are buggered. All reports that I had seen about them being back to relative normality is bullshit. There are lots of people milling around waiting for a train, and a quick chat with the station staff reveals the last one came in an hour ago and there isn't another one in sight at the moment. I knew this moment was coming, so I find a seat, pull out my thermos and get to waiting. A train finally arrives at 1 PM. Set to head into London. Normally a 45-minute journey. The poor soul driving the train apologies for the delays and warns us that despite stopping at less stations, we are still in for a journey. I won't bore you with the particulars, but when he said we were in for a long one, considering the weather, I thought he did quite well. We got to our station in London for 3:30 PM. Luckily for me, My office was just round the corner from the station, so I rocked up at 3:45 p.m. I got settled in and logged in, said hello to my colleagues and manager and then had a look at the time. Would you look at that? It's 4 p.m. I started at 8 a.m. so I finish at 4 p.m. So I logged out, said bye to my colleagues and my manager and started the trip home. To answer some questions that I am sure will come out of this. My manager was chill. She knew my personality and knew exactly what I was going to do and I knew she would have my back. My colleagues found it hilarious. The head of IT was less than impressed. He had a meeting with my manager that day and she basically told him to stuff it as the service desk was hers to manage and we all went back to WFH on the Friday and some days the next week till the weather cleared up. My colleagues who took holiday got their holiday days back. Thanks to my manager. I got home at about 10 p.m. that night because everyone trying to leave London was a nightmare. TL. Doctor, snow stopped me getting to work but I could do my job from home. Head of IT threw his toys out the pram and made us go into work or take holiday. I headed into work at 9 a.m. after doing an hour at home and got to work just before 4 p.m. Logged in, then logged out at 4 p.m. my finish time and went home.